So shall I say a bit of background about this? Or? Well, what I'm going to do is just read the opening couple of pages and see if you can guess what the location is. So it's from Vladimir Nabokov's Mary, and it's set in Berlin in the 1920s. I have to do different voices, I guess. Lev Glivo, Lev Glibovich. A name like that's enough to twist your tongue off, my dear fellow. Yes, it is, Ganin agreed somewhat coldly, trying to make out this face of his interlocutor in this unexpected darkness. He was annoyed by the absurd situation in which they both found themselves and by this enforced conversation with a stranger. I didn't ask for your name and patronymic just out of idle curiosity, you know. The voice went on, undismayed. I think every name... Oh, look, just let me press the button again. Ganin interrupted him. Oh, do press it. I'm afraid it won't do any good. As I was saying, every name has its responsibilities. Lev and Glib. Now, that's a rare combination and very demanding. It means you've got to be terse, firm and rather eccentric. So my name is much more modest. It's a much more modest one. And my wife's name is just plain Mary. By the way, let me introduce myself. Aleshki Inovovich Alyovirov. Sorry, I think I just trod on your foot. How do you do? Said Ganin, feeling in the dark for a hand that poked at his cuff. Look, do you think we're going to be stuck here for long? It's time someone did something. Oh, hell. Come on now, come on. Let's just sit us down. Let's sit down on the seat and wait. This tiresome, cheerful voice rang out again just above his ear. No, so yesterday when I arrived, we bumped into each other out in the passage. And then in the evening, through the wall, I heard you clearing your throat. And I knew at once from the sound of your cough that you were a fellow countryman. Now tell me, have you been boarding here for long? Ages. Have you got a match? Oh, no, I don't smoke. It's a grubby place, though. This is a grubby place, this pension, even though it is Russian. I'm a very lucky man, though, you know. My wife's coming from Russia. 4 years. That's no joke. 4 years. Yes, sir. Not long now. It's Sunday today. Damn bloody darkness, muttered Ganin, and he cracked his fingers. I wonder what time it is. Alevarov sighed noisily, giving off the warm, stale smell of an elderly man not in the best of health. There's something sad about that smell. Only 6 more days now, you know. Only 6 more days. I assume she's coming on Saturday. My wife had a letter from her yesterday. She wrote the address in a very funny way. It's pity it's so dark, or I'd show you this letter. What I can hear. What are you fumbling for, my fellow? Those little vents, look, they don't open, you know. For 2 pins, I just smash them, said Ganin. Come on, Lev Glibovich. Wouldn't it be better to... Maybe we can play some party game. I know some splendid ones. I make them up myself. For instance, okay. Think of a 2-figure number, Ready? Count me out, said Ganin, and he thumped twice on the wall with his fist. It's no good. You know, the porters, he's been asleep for hours. He's been asleep, droned on Elevchukov's voice. It's no use you banging on the wall like that. But, okay, but you must agree. You must agree that we cannot hang here all night. It looks like we're going to have to. Don't you think there's something symbolic in our meeting? Like this, Lev Glebovich. When we were on terra firma, we didn't even know each other. And then we happened to come home at the same time, and we get into this contraption together. By the way, the floor is horribly thin, and there's nothing but a black well beneath us. Well, as I was saying, we stepped in without a word, still not knowing each other, glided up in silence, and then suddenly, stop, and then darkness. What's symbolic about that? Ganin asked gloomily. Well, the fact that we've stopped. We're motionless in this darkness. And here we are, that we're waiting. So anyway, at lunch today, that man, what's his name? You remember this man? He's an old writer. Oh yes, Podrogin. He was arguing with me about the sense of this emigre life of ours, this perpetual waiting. You were out all day, you were absent, weren't you, Leva Glebovich? Yes, I was out of town. Spring, it must be nice in the country now. Alavirov's voice faded away for a few moments, and when it sounded again, there was an unpleasant lilt to it. Probably because the speaker was smiling. When my wife comes, I will take her out to the country. She adores the long walks. Didn't the landlady tell me that your room is going to be free by Saturday? That is so, Ganin replied curtly. Are you leaving Berlin altogether? Ganin nodded, forgetting that nods were invisible in the dark. Alfalirov fidgeted on the seat and he sighed. Once or twice, and then he began gently whistling a saccharine tune. Stopping and starting again. 10 minutes like this passed. Suddenly, there was a click from above. That's better, Ganin said with a smile. And at the same moment, the ceiling bulb blazed forth, and the humming and the heaving cage was flooded with yellow light. Alfalirov blinked, as though he was just waking up. He was wearing an old, sandy-coloured, formless overcoat of the so-called in-between season sort, and he was holding a bowler hat. His thin, fair hair was slightly ruffled, and something about his features reminded one of a religious oleograph. That little golden beard, the turn of that scraggy neck from which he pulled off a bright speckled scarf. And with a lurch, whoomph, the lift caught on the sill of the 4th floor landing, and finally it stopped. A miracle, Alfalirov said, grinning as he opened the door. I thought someone had pressed the button and brought us up, but look, there's no one here. After you, Leva Glebovich. But Ganin, with a grimace of impatience, gave Alfalirov a slight push and, having followed him out, relieved his feelings by noisily slamming that steel door behind him. Never before had he felt so irritable. "Oh, it's a miracle," the old man repeated. "Up we came, and yet look, there's no one here. That's symbolic too." There we go. Did you know we were in a lift?
Oh, no. Oh, okay. Ah, wow.
So it's two men stuck in a lift.
Who's the book by?
Nabokov. It was his first novel.
And when is it set?
1920s. So I just read a little bit about Nabokov writes prose the only way it should be written, that is, ecstatically. In a Berlin boarding house filled with an assortment of curious Russian émigrés, Lev Ganin, a vigorous young officer, is poised between his past and his future. He relives his first love affair. His memories of Mary are suffused with the freshness of youth and the idyllic ambience of a pre-revolutionary Russia. In stark contrast is the unappealing boarder living in the next room to Ganin, who, he discovers, is actually Mary's husband, temporarily separated from her by the revolution, but expecting her imminent arrival to Berlin from Russia. Mary is Nabokov's first novel, and it's a fond, enchanting and gripping evocation of the pangs of young love and the power of memory.
Wow, it was his first novel.
There you go. I just really love how you can almost feel, something's tugging at his cuff in the dark, and he's like, when he says, "Oh, come on, we'll play a game. Think of two numbers. Count me out." You could just get a sense of their characters. So he's lodging in a boarding house in Berlin up until that Saturday, and then he wants to move on somewhere. He has been an officer in the Crimea in a war. And by chance, this old man, who he thinks is a bit disgusting, is actually married to Mary, his very first love, when Ganin was a teenager.
What's the picture on the front of it?
It's from a painting from 1928. Meredith Frampton was the painter. Or was the portrait. It's just so beautifully written. I mean, I've just earmarked some of the pages that are just so beautifully descriptive. Like I'll just read this bit. I can't remember what it was. There was a touch of autumn in the air. Every now and again, a small yellow leaf falls from a birch tree. The broad fields, already harvested, have a bright autumnal emptiness, and along the forest's edge, where an expanse of tall grass is spared by the haymakers, it shows its sheen to the wind. Torpid bumblebees sleep on the mauve cushions of scabious flowers. And one afternoon, in a pavilion of the park, yes, that pavilion, this pavilion stood on rotting piles above a ravine, reached from either side by two sloping footbridges, slippy with alder ements and fir needles. It's just beautifully descriptive. But I've got as far as the last chapter, and I'm going to try and finish reading it tomorrow, because it ends with him leaving Berlin.
Where did you find the book?
I just saw it in a bookshop, I think, for £1. I think I liked that it was a thin book. I think it was in a charity shop, thin book. I liked the picture, and when I read the back, it said in Berlin in a boarding house. So I mentioned, didn't I, that the landlady has got torn pages Oh yeah, let's read a quick bit here. The pension was both Russian and nasty. It was chiefly nasty because all day long and much of the night the trains of the Stadtbahn could be heard, creating the impression that the whole building was slowly on the move. There was a hallway. This hallway where there hung a bleary mirror with a ledge for gloves, and where stood an oak chest so placed that people naturally barked their shins on it, narrowed into a bare and very cramped passage. Along each side of this passage were 3 rooms, numbered with large black figures stuck onto the doors. These were simply leaves torn off of a year-old calendar. The first 6 days of April, 1923. April the 1st was on the first door on the left. This was Leverov's room. The next room was Ganin's, while the third belonged to the landlady, Lydia Nikolaevna Don. She was the widow of a German businessman who, 20 years ago, had brought her here from Sarepta, and who the year before had died of a brain fever. In the 3 rooms down the right-hand side, April the 4th to April the 6th, there lived Anton Serebrovich Progorin, who was an old Russian poet. There was Clara, in the middle room, a full-busted girl with strikingly bluish-brown eyes. And finally, in room 6, at the turn of the passage, were 2 ballet dancers, Colin and Gorna Rostistov. They were both as giggly as women. They were thin, with powdered noses and muscular thighs. And at the end of this first stretch of the passage was the dining room, with a lithograph of the Last Supper on the wall, which was facing the door, and there was the yellow horned skulls of deer along another wall above a bulbous sideboard. On this sideboard stood 2 crystal vases, once the cleanest things in the whole apartment, but now they were dulled by a coating of fluffy dust. Isn't that beautiful? You just have this introduction to this narrow passageway with a 2 bigger set of drawers that people scuff their chins on, and dining room at the end. Oh, it's just so descriptive. There we go.
Wonderful.
So that's how I know it's from 1923. I'd forgotten, because it says the doors have got pages ripped from the previous year's calendar, 1923. So the whole story is he's rather perplexed that he's due to be leaving this boarding house, but then this girl that he loved when he was a teenager, he's going to be moving into this boarding room with this boarding house with this older man who's been stuck in the lift with, and is really perplexed what to do. So here he is in a cafe. So he strolled slowly along the pale April streets where the black domes of umbrellas bobbed and swam. He stared long at a splendid model of the Mauretania in a steam shop company's window, and at the coloured strings joining the ports of 2 continents onto a long map. At the back was a photograph of a tropical grove, chocolate brown palms against a beige sky. Ganin spent about an hour drinking coffee, sitting at a picture window, looking out onto the passers-by. Back in the boarding house in his room, he had tried to just sit and read, but he found the contents of the book so alien and inappropriate that he abandoned it right in the middle of a subordinate clause. He was in the kind of mood that he called dispersion of the will. He sat motionless at this table in the cafe, unable to decide what to do. To shift the position of his body, or to get up and wash his hands, or to go over to the cafe window. Yet outside was the bleak day, and this bleak day was now fading into twilight. Oh, it was a dreadful, agonizing state, rather like that dull sense of unease when we wake up, but at first cannot open our eyelids, as though they were stuck together for good. Ganin felt that the murky twilight which was gradually seeping into the room was also slowly penetrating his body, transforming his blood into fog, and that he was powerless to stop this spell that was being cast on him by the twilight. And he was powerless because he had no precise desire, and this tortured him because he was vainly seeking something to desire. He couldn't even make himself stretch out his hand to switch on the light. The simple transition from intention to action seemed an unimaginable miracle. Nothing relieved his depression. His thoughts slithered aimlessly. His heartbeat was faint. His underclothes stuck unpleasantly to his body. And at one moment he felt he should at once write a letter to Ludmilla, explaining firmly that it was now time to break off this dreary affair. And that at the next he remembered that he was actually going to go out to the cinema with her that evening, and that somehow it was much harder to make himself ring her up and cancel today's date than it was to write a letter, which prevented him from doing either. There we go. Oh, so he's actually sitting in his room not knowing what to do. There's a later bit where he's sitting in a cafe not knowing what to do. But it's just that thing. Ganin felt the murky twilight which was gradually seeping into the room was also slowly penetrating his body, transforming his blood into fog, and that he was powerless to stop the spell that was being cast on him by the twilight. Oh, so poetic. Whoa. I'm going to stroll out into the twilight. Put my trousers on. Oh, it's so beautifully written.
You have been listening to radio on Berlin.
Yeah!